hole in the wall. The hole in the wall. The hole in the wall motel. The hole in the wall motel. There's a hole in this wall.
Of course, what we can't get is the distinctive aroma of the disinfectant.
This one is not emergency money, I just can come with the one for that and you can cover the other one or two. Okay. Okay. Control. Okay. What's behind me now is the Rupert River, and I'm shouting because the rapids are so loud. It's this river, or at least where this river enters into Hudson Bay, a couple of dozen miles west of here, where Hudson overwintered. He didn't want to overwinter. Remember, he was in Albany in 1609 and came up here in 1610 and overwintered till the spring of 1611 at the mouth of this river. Now, the problem with that is they were hunting, they were fishing, but they weren't very good at it. And they started starving. They bartered some with the Cree Indians, but Hudson was famous for not getting along with the Indians, and the Indians apparently had enough of them and just deserted them at one point. So after overwintering in the river, obviously they didn't come up this far because of these rapids. You can never get through these rapids, up rapids at Colorado and other places. And these are above a class 6, you can't do it. You see those plumes out in the middle, you can never get a rapid here. And even though it looks like you can go down here very quickly, you're going to hit solid rock. So you're just out of luck. So Hudson stayed at the mouth of this river for months, 10 months. The river doesn't, climate doesn't really break up until June, right around now. We're in here in June of 2009. So 399 years ago, Hudson was here. And when the weather broke in June and he tried to get out with his men mutinied. They were starving. He wanted to go further in the Northwest Passage, supposedly, and his men didn't want to do that. So they just mutinied, and they put him and his son and some of the crew into a small boat and sailed away. And that's the last we know of Henry Hudson. Everything else is legend. That was like life jacket.
Hi. You're very pretty. I like your jacket. Thank you.
You want a picture taken here? That's kind of pretty. Pretty much. Candy cane, TP, parallel. Candy cane with something like that.
going to be all dammed off at some point?
Yeah, the dam is finished.
They just haven't diverted it yet.
We don't want it, but I guess the government is getting money into the program. September, the end of the dam. And that'll eventually shut these rapids off. Dam. But again, how many people see it? A couple of dozen? It's a little romantic being here at this time because this river, which has flowed for thousands of years, I'm sure, is about to be cut off by a big hydroelectric dam north of here. North of here on the river, or I should say east of here. It's a huge basin, 43,000 square kilometers that feeds this river. Now they're shutting the river off so they can get hydropower to run the mine. From what we can ascertain from what we've read and what we see around here, certain expletives on bridges and stuff, the three are not happy about this. They want, of course, to keep everything natural. But they, quote, made an agreement with the Canadian government in 2002, and now the dam is finished and it's just waiting to be opened. It will be opened in September. So not many people see this in a year. I can't imagine many people make this stretch, but starting in September, that'll be the end of it. So what you're seeing is you're not going to be able to come and see this yourself in a year, but it certainly is worth it now. Place to stay. That's from over there. I think that's it. I think you mean there too. Yeah. Actually, in the top it's nicer than the website. Yeah. It's amazing how he went back to England in 1609 and then got a different, that was a Dutch ship. And then he worked for the British in 1610 and came up through the passage. When we're up there, I'll tell some stories about it. These guys had cojones the size of elephants to do the stuff they did. But then again, life was so hard in those days.
Yeah, right. It was never going to be an easy ride.
Right, staying home wasn't too great either. He had a wife and kids, obviously he had kids, he had one wife. And the Dutch kept his wife and kids as hostage the voyage to Albany. At least that's one of the stories. Other stories are. Well, the Dutch wanted him to come back and tell them the story.
Okay.
And so this is the phone number we can reach you at, right? This is your phone number?
3134.
Oh, I got
That's the phone number, right? We have all kinds of cell phone today.
okay.
In the
Oh.
pocket. Rings all over around you, right?
Okay,
That phone 3134.
I got it.
978.
Are you George's son?
Yes. Yeah. That's Lucas.
So if we go, we
Want to talk to you?
have to watch the Pittsburgh Penguins win tonight.
Oh, me, I don't watch much hockey.
No, you don't.
No, not my.
Yeah.
Me, I look at the whales, I look at the seal and the geese and just more than that. Me, I don't know much this,
Yeah.
okay?
So how about tomorrow, say 2 o'clock? We go for a boat ride?
Tomorrow?
Yeah.
Yeah,
We hire you
anytime,
for a boat ride?
I'm open anytime. If it's, we can see blue
Yeah.
sky, if we can see blue sky something, if it's not like wet,
Yeah, it was terrible this morning. I
terrible,
couldn't see it.
cold, frozen, solid.
Okay, so say 2 o'clock tomorrow,
Yeah,
and I will call you in about 1 o'clock.
yeah.
After lunch, we'll have some lunch and then
I
we'll
try to
go up
stay at home tomorrow.
Okay, and we'll go on a boat, you know, at least somewhere. We want to go out on the bay and we want a video on the bay, so
Okay.
when we're talking, and he'd be great on the video, you look like an actor.
I am.
Yeah.
I've
Yours
seen
would be great.
all the places now.
Yeah, and we would go out on the boat for a while, we'd put around and then we'd come back. Yeah.
See here?
Yeah.
This is where I born actually. I'm not from here, right?
Okay.
This is where I'm supposed to come.
Wow, up in the Straits.
Yeah. That's where my place is supposed to be.
That water is supposed to be very rough.
That's straight.
Yeah.
That's a current a lot.
Yeah. They say it's very difficult to go through on a boat with that
Not
Strait.
too bad, depends the weather. I mean the wind.
Yeah,
Yeah, wind.
yeah, that's pretty fun water.
Yeah.
And we wanted to see the Aurora Borealis, but with this weather we can't see them now. Yeah.
I'll show you where I see, I figure grieve or not.
Okay.
Hey, look. I'm gonna show you. If we do, maybe hunt geese instead. That's what I do. You watch the hockey
Yeah.
on the television, and me, I watch the geese. Right? We see the geese, we end up there. That's another thing.
Are still many good hunting for geese as there used
Yeah,
to be?
yeah, it'll be season till fly off. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no problem. I just to show you anyway.
Okay, so after lunch we will give you a phone call,
Yeah,
and then we'll go out. It would be
great. Yeah,
And we'll bring Henry Hudson with us. Bring him back.
yeah. I'll show you another Henry Hudson over here. Down at the high hill we call it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah, I know where every place is around here now. All the
So you came by boat all this distance?
yeah,
Must be
distance there.
800, 900 miles.
Plane sometimes, dig a canoe sometimes. Take a little while, one long ago. I seen all the coast. I stopped to Eastman. The Skegness, I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know. I stopped here.
yeah.
Eastman, you know Eastman?
No, the only place we've been is here.
Oh. 4 hours by canoe to Eastman.
Uh-huh,
4 hours.
yeah.
It's about 90 kilometers, pretty close.
Yeah. We stopped on the way up, we stopped to look at the rapids on the Rupert River. That was really spectacular rapids.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's up here, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was good, yeah.
By looking at the map, it's 850 across.
850 kilometers?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny, he showed us on the map, Fort Albany is right there.
Oh, yeah.
I
That's probably Albany everybody thinks we're from.
That's it.
This is Fort Albany. You say Fort Albany down here too?
We have a fort, it used to be Fort Orange originally.
Oh.
Henry Hudson was here in 1609, and then the next year he was here. Different boat, he went home and came
I
back.
think you heard about a lot of stories. You were skating this around somewhere, James Bay, that guy,
That's not
probably.
But it's interesting because even though we know we're not going to discover much about him, it's just interesting because we want to tell the people in Albany the history of Henry Hudson. Until recently, I didn't know there was a mutiny. I didn't know he had lost his crew and thrown ashore with his son and everything. So, in order to tell that story, it's much better to actually go there and meet people like you guys and show them the area. So that's what we're really here for. We don't expect Henry Hudson to pop out of his grave and ask for a beer.
I figure you're going to look at it tomorrow.
Yeah.
What is it? I don't figure out grief or no grief.
Yeah.
Maybe you can recognize more than I do that stuff.
Yeah, we'll take a look.
You would agree? That's
Yeah.
about 18
Yeah.
kilometers
Yeah.
down.
Well, and that
If we
takes
can-
about half an hour, 18 minutes.
Less than that.
So you must have a good boat. That's pretty fast.
No, the same boat you saw there, but 24 footer.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay. So you live right here somewhere, near here?
Right into the corner blue building over there, the
Uh-huh.
historic community.
Okay.
Not very far.
Yeah.
On the road corner there, rat on top, rat, name on the road.
Okay. Okay. That'll be great. So we'll get to go out on the bay.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be better tomorrow, the weather, a little bit better.
I'll check.
We'll check, I'll tell you. Should be a little more north wind tomorrow, I think.
Yeah. They say that the rain at least will go away, at least by tomorrow afternoon. They say in the morning it'll be like this. We see a lot of this the last couple of days since we've been here, but it'll be good.
Yeah,
But it's pretty cold today, yeah.
Yeah, pretty warm yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was warm.
Even I can put my feet in the lake yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was warm.
What do you do? What kind of work here?
I'm a police officer.
Oh, uh-oh.
Yeah.
Hide everything. This town has some beautiful municipal buildings. We've seen the police station and we've seen that new administration building.
Yeah.
I'd like to work on that building. That's a beautiful building. And we went up to the youth center. We got inside the youth center. That was nice.
Oh yeah, very interesting.
Yeah.
I have a little better than that map. You can see more
Okay,
stuff.
we'd love, we can take a.
Yeah, I got
So how old are you, George?
Oh, how many I owe? 95. I feel 95. I'm 65.
I'm 68.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're same guys.
You are a lot younger than I am. Okay.
Okay, great.
I'll give you a map tomorrow what it looks like.
Okay, great. So I'll call you at 1 and plan for 2 o'clock.
Okay.
We'll bring our warm clothing.
Want to take lunch with you?
Yeah, why don't you come for lunch? Can you come for lunch here?
Lunch here?
You want to have hit lunch here?
Yeah, why not?
Okay,
Yeah.
12:30?
4:30?
Okay,
Yeah,
lunch.
okay. Look at the Henry Hudson over here, Henry Hudson all over graves. Henry over here, Henry over there. Should look at those about Great Well, about 56 kilometers.
Yeah.
I'm sure something there. The big anchor, I don't know. It must be buried sandbar. Maybe long time ago. Anchor is small for a boat, I heard, eh?
Mm-hmm.
You see?
Yeah,
That must be the anchor right there.
great. So we're up for a trip tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, George. Great to see you. See you. much does a goose weigh?
Well, some of them are pretty big. They get pretty big. Like the one I have is. What would you say?
4 pounds, 5 pounds?
It's an average size.
Oh, it looks good.
The fire can get really hot. That's where we used to stay when I was small. I never really stayed out around like the Bay Area until just recently because my husband's camp was out on the Bay. So we go there, we take a helicopter. And
So
we take a
before-
helicopter
yeah.
back.
Yeah. Before the road, isn't it?
Well,
That's a
even
really good
today.
road. It's nice and long.
Yeah, like you see a lot of camps on the way in too.
Is that right?
You don't? Did you see any on the side of the road? You'll see some cabins.
A couple.
Yeah.
We saw a lot of what we call cairns, piles of stone. Usually say somebody died there or something.
Yeah, but there's cabins there. You'll see. Even on the James Bay Highway, you'll see that. There's,
Now, what do you do in the
Cabins.
winter? Do you take the James Bay Road, or is that a
Yep.
problem? Huh?
yeah, it's good. Actually, my husband works on the road maintenance, so you know that stop there, 381.
Yeah.
That's where he usually lives for 2 weeks.
Yeah, we stop there on the way up like everybody else, and we'll stop there on the way back.
Yeah.
Do they try to clear the snow off that in the winter?
Yep.
That's
It's
a big
always
job.
maintained.
How deep does the snow get here?
Pretty deep. It needs snowshoes if you were going to walk anywhere. There's a couple of some like well, it depends. Some places have really big snowdrifts.
So George's son is a policeman.
Yeah, what's his name?
Luke.
Lucy.
That should be my job. You have to reach up high.
My string is too short. So you have to have it a certain a little better than it is. I'm probably gonna have to use the small pieces. Too wet. Oh, sorry.
Nope, I got it.
This is tree
Okay.
standing. You're coming out in the back of tree. You go back in the hole and you trap.
You have to do that again, George, because that's a famous scene from Jaws.
Yeah, do that again for us so I can get the whole thing.
He talks about the rabbit coming out of the hole, goes into the...
I don't even remember
Yeah,
that.
it's Robert Shaw.
English, that's called bolt knot. You know the bolt with the screws?
Bolt and knot, yeah.
Bolt
Okay.
knot.
Okay.
Now, this is how you do. You put the trap in a rabbit's hole.
Rabbit's hole?
Now it's rabbit's hole.
Yep, rabbit's hole.
Now rabbit coming out from his hole.
Yes.
He coming out and the tree standing up like that, eh?
Right.
We go around the back. Now rabbit go around to his hole and he trap. Caught and he can't get out.
He can't get out. So the rabbit comes out of his hole, goes around the tree, goes back into his hole.
Right.
Yeah.
Another way, when you rush in the boat or a sailboat,
Okay.
you gotta do this like that, very fast.
Oh.
Oh, you won't recognize. That's
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
You throw it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Even the loader, you know the big loader?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You tie that to your car.
Right.
It'll pull it.
Pull very hard.
Yeah.
Then he coming out. This still loose.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Even the loader.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's easy to always...
Look.
So you can always untie it.
Look at him, right? Pull very hard, eh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very hard. When I want to take it out, still loose.
Okay, now the youngest guy swims out and gets the boat.
Anything you see my boat, see.
There you go. Another rabbit.
Another Rambo.
Yeah.
Okay, how do we pull the boat?
Okay, whatever way you want. So.
No, leave it there.
Oh.
Just look. You ever see the guy like that?
No.
You're different, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, fast too, you know. Stop there. Not exactly. Leave it there, leave it there. You recognize?
I was thinking for a minute we were gonna be walking out.
You recognize that? Very much. When it's empty, very good for flow.
We're out on this island. We're pulled over to show you that we really can't go very much further because of the ice. Not only are the ice floes getting large here, but they're moving. They're split. So that obviously if one of them hits your boat at the wrong angle and you're going at the wrong speed, you could get into a lot of difficulty. So Inuit, George, has taken us up here to show us that's about it as far as we can go in the bay in June. Now within a month or so, by the end of July, a month and a half, much of that ice will be gone and we could actually sail to the other side of the bay, which is 500 miles away. That's where Fort Albany is, or Albany Island. We're not going to go there. In fact, with no reason to go there at all. So Henry Hudson, of course, was in this area at some time. And he was, as he charted this bay, as I said, he charted almost the whole bay, quite a bit of it, probably looking for a good anchorage, probably looking for some place where they could come back and set up a fort to subdue the Indians, and then eventually to set up a place where they could look and start trading furs, and that eventually happened. That's the Hudson Bay Company. But what we're seeing now is the extent, and here he's trying to do this right around this time in June, and he's running into difficulty. Now you can imagine the crew, seeing that the water to the east is pretty clear, the ice floes are small, saying let's go home, and Henry's saying no, we're going to figure out a way through this ice to go to the Northwest Passage. And the crew saying, sorry Henry, but we're not doing that with you. Now the Northwest Passage by the 1630s or 1640s was thought to be a myth. They finally thought that they could never get through, that it was blocked with ice. There is a strait there that exits Hudson's Bay to the west, but it was always ice covered year-round. Due to global warming, it now isn't. It's now open, and for several months of the year, you would be able to sail a boat from Europe right across from China. It looks like it may stay open for 4 or 5 months of a year, and then eventually, the way the ice is melting so rapidly in the Arctic, it looks like it will perhaps be open almost year-round, perhaps 9 or 10 months. So the Northwest Passage is a reality, but the Panama Canal and other things have made it a little less exciting. Worldwide trade does all sorts of other things, but I think that you'll see traffic through that within a decade. That'll become common for goods to go through the north of Canada, to go from the Pacific to the Atlantic, rather than going down to the Panama Canal. And before the Panama Canal, they had to go all the way around South America to the Horn, Cape Horn, and that was known as puking around the Horn, because just like the furious overfall, which we call Hudson Strait, is so difficult to navigate because of the winds and the ice and the currents, the same thing was true at the Straits of Magellan at the other side of the world, as far south as you can go. So we're almost as north as you can go and still have settlements, and the other side was Magellan Strait. So this ice is here. There's nothing we can do about it. We're going to probably play around on it. We're taking our photographs on it, having a good time. But there it is, Winnipeg, or Hudson Bay.
Boy, look at this guy. What do you call this thing? What do you call that? Yeah, that's where you are now, eh? Yeah. Now, where do you want to go? You want to go where it was? Now we are at Winnipeg right here, right?
Yes.
We coming out here.
Yes.
We got what's here. You see those are little houses standing up?
Yes.
It's right here.
Okay.
It's where we are right here, right now. We want to face that. That's where we want to go down here.
Okay.
It's another 10 minutes to go from here.
That's Hilltop?
10 minutes. Yeah.
That's Hilltop of the Supreme Hills.
Yeah. It's about 400 feet high mountain.
Pretty high for this type of terrain. And there's the old women's gym down here, right?
That's the old, look.
Yeah.
Old factory.
Yeah.
Old women's gym.
Yeah. And then is East Main.
East Main here.
So where's the Rupert River? Here it is.
Over here. That's where Rupert
Here
is.
it is. Ah, so I see why he came into this other bay, Rupert Bay, and he stayed over winter. Henry Hudson stayed there.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, stayed there for the winter. And so to be protected somewhat. Who knows, that ice probably broke up earlier because it's probably hell of a shallow
bit
bay.
further
Look at that,
south.
5, 3, 2, 0.
Zero.
Shallow, early shallow.
Very shallow. All that blue is all shallow.
So that would break up sooner. So he
Yeah.
comes out thinking he's going to see more open country, and he hits
Look
this ice.
Look at we mean it's all white here.
Yes.
Where was where did he actually get taken out in the mutiny, Tom?
Somewhere around here.
All you see the ice here?
Yeah.
All over.
Yes.
Yeah.
Somewhere just in this area. He left this bay, and we know he was sailing up this way
Yeah.
a couple of days, and then I don't know how far he got, but probably around here.
You must have leftover things somewhere around here.
Sure, you'd think so. And then, so it was pretty close to here. And assuming he tried to chase the boat for a while, but he wasn't too successful. So you would almost think this is right in the area, within this area where he probably made it. And maybe he got lucky.
Got some tree to tip him.
He stayed skating a lot thing, I think.
Yeah,
But how did he get in there?
yeah.
It was shallow
It was
here.
very shallow because his boat only had a 10-foot draft.
Maybe long ago, maybe deep water.
It was
Could have
deeper
been.
then, George.
Deeper back
Water
then.
was
Okay.
deeper then.
It's
We just
deeper.
heard that the pastor of that church, is that the church where they lost their pastor?
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what he say.
that's what he said this morning.
Yeah. That's what he talking about.
Yes.
He say 10 churches over there, right?
Yeah, in that little place. Now we saw the rapids up here. We
Yeah,
stopped
Berry
there.
Fall Roberts Highway. I
Yeah,
don't know
that's right.
where.
The James Bay Highway. Well,
Probably
it must be
Duck Nose
somewhere.
where it is. I
here.
don't know.
Yeah.
Somewhere here, Berry Fall.
Yeah, so we
That's-
came up. Well, we came from
1,000 miles south of there, and then we stopped here to see the rapids.
That's 30% less. There's 30% of it's like
30% of what?
70% less water coming down there today
Sun is
than
coming up.
11 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And they're
we'll
putting a
see
big dam in
sunshine.
now, so that's the end of it.
Whoa.
You see the East Main River?
Yeah,
The
that's
East Main River used to be
Old
like
water.
the Rupert River.
Yeah.
But now in the summer you can walk across it,
yeah.
and Rupert is going to be the same.
Look, all the water going over there to
Destroying
Chesapeake now.
that river.
Yeah.
Now.
Okay.
I figure a big anger is over here. This is where here.
Yeah. That's where you saw the
Yeah.
grave, right?
Yeah. Grave is here.
That's a couple of 100 miles from here, all the way up to there.
If it's nice day like that, I can go out straight to the bay. Takes same day I can
You
go
could do
here.
it in one day?
Yeah, I can do it if it's nice.
Yeah, if it's
Not
good.
nice 1 week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Sleep every place. But here, no problem.
Yeah.
When I get there, problem. No shelter.
Ah, I see. So now we have patchwork from the cottage. Everybody has it. It's kind of nice.
Yeah, yeah. Here's your help you with that stick. I ain't forever.
This is a grave. Nobody knows whose grave it is, but it's probably not an Indian grave. If it were Inuit or Cree, it would be facing this way. The Cree always bury their dead with their heads facing the sun as it rises in the east. This grave is in this direction. It's very old wood. It's not at all in the style of an Indian burial, and it's believed to contain the remains of a white man by oral legend. However, nobody's dug it up. The soil is very acidic, so the bones may be gone anyway. Probably couldn't do any DNA analysis. The other thing is that over the years the stones have been moved, most likely by some large animal, perhaps even a polar bear, just playing around, sniffing, hearing, smelling something. So instead of having a nice layer of stones in the right direction, you have the stones that were obviously the large ones were put here for a burial, were now moved. There are several graves on this island. This is called the island of Old Paint, as I was saying on the way in. From the ochre that's in the rocks here, the Indians made their war paint. There look to be other graves here, not quite as elaborate as this one. This one is indeed an elaborate grave, but we're going to take just a scan to show you that there are other ones. As you notice, Doug has his rifle ready in case anything happens, and all we know is that this is one grave that appears to be of some white man. Was it Henry's crew or later voyages? No one knows. However, all the later voyages, they kept records of the men that died and where they died and where they buried them. The survivors, if there were any, or the people from Henry who were in that little boat, the 9 of them, there are no records of those people. So if you discover a grave and there's no record of it being here, then that leads you to believe there's a chance, perhaps a small chance, perhaps a larger chance, that this is in fact something of a white man who survived for a while at least after Henry was set adrift by the mutineers. Now what's that about? 50 yards down, we see another grave. We're hiking over to that grave now. It's not as elaborate. The stones haven't been moved, but you can see the pattern of the grave. You can see it was circled with a bunch of wood that has long since disintegrated. And pardon me if I'm kneeling on the body of some Englishman or something, but there's lots of wood here arranged in some sort of a circle.
This isn't the place. This is a camp.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is not a grave. This is a campsite. This circle means a campsite. And the belief is that they were people who were involved in the burial of that particular place. And as you can see, they sat round waiting perhaps for the person to die, or perhaps mourning the person or celebrating the person after death, whatever they do. But there's another site that is just unexplainable. Just left the island where we ate, and we're going to Old Paint Island. The paint means the paint, they got red ochre from these hills and they use that for their war paint. And so the name Paint is all over this place. It's also called High Hill because there's the grave of a white man, and we'll tell you when we get to the grave why they think it's a white man here, and that's why we're going. It's one of many graves that people think could have been Henry Hudson or his crew. We're seeing loon landing, big birds. We're seeing Canada geese. What we're not seeing is we're hoping to see a polar bear. Polar bears come into these waters at certain times, and there's enough ice out there that they could get close. We'd love to see a polar bear running along an ice floe or running along the shore or even swimming up to the boat. It doesn't look likely that that's going to happen. But at any rate, these graves are certainly European, and we'll tell you why when we get there, but there are several of them in the area, and nobody knows who they are and why they're there, and that's part of the whole mystery of the myth of, or the legend I should say, not a myth, obviously Henry Hudson was here and he died. So it's part of the legend of what happened to Henry Hudson. So we're going to go up to this island, and then we're going to climb about 400 feet, that's the height of this hill, and we're going to be shown this grave, and we're going to explain why George and Duck, which is our other guy in the front here, know that, can tell us the reasons why this is obviously not a Cree grave or not an Inuit grave. George is white and I'm sorry, George is Inuit and Duck is white. His name is actually Douglas, and the natives thought his nickname meant Duck. But anyway, we're going to do that, and we'll get back to you in about 2 or 3 minutes. Back and forth, charting this bay in great detail. That leads credence to the story that he wasn't really looking for the Northwest Passage. That might have been one of his missions, but that he was also interested in the great mineral wealth of this area. Not far from where we came up, we drove all the way from Albany, 1,100 miles to get here, including over a road the last 400 miles where we had to sign in, because if you don't come out the other end, they go looking for you. But at any rate, Henry comes in here and spends an inordinate amount of time here.
He probably is looking for beaver pellets. There's some legend that he brought home from Albany the first beaver pellet to Europe from the New World. And remember, after Albany was called Fort Orange, it was called Beaverwick. And so there's a lot of money to be made in pelts. There's a lot of money to be made in minerals, especially gold. And the English want a slice of it. England at this time is fighting with Portugal and Holland, which rule the waves. Right behind them is England, and then France and a few other countries. So England wants their slice of the people who live here, warning them about that, if they even did warn them about it. And his ship gets stuck in the ice, and they have to overwinter. They only had 8 months supply. They already had used up about 6 months of that, and now they're facing a long winter, a 10-month winter. They put in at a place south of here, about 100 miles, and we'll take you to that river. Not to the actual place Henry Hudson was, you can't get to that, but to the river itself called the Rupert River, which is famous for its rapids. We'll show you that later in the video. So anyway, he stays over winter, and he hunts and they fish, and they're not bad at it, but they're not as good as the Cree, and so they're starving. They're dying of, they're not dying, but they do, 1 or 2 of them do die, but scurvy is taking over. They're malnutrition, they're getting on each other's nerves. Henry is famous for not getting along with the natives, and so, it's that blast of water just got your camera, but it looks fine. Henry is not getting along too well with the natives, and they don't care for him. In fact, there are stories of when he left the ship with his men to try to hunt, the natives setting the forest ablaze to keep them from going any further. They make it to the spring, and the spring is June, and now we're here in June, and look at how I'm dressed. So it's not a spring that we're used to, or a summer that we're used to. So in June of 2011, they start to leave. They try to leave this area, and they're having trouble doing it. As we'll see, there's still ice in the bay at this time of year, and he thinks he can get away, but he can't. So what he does is he talks to the men. They have about 10 days food supply left. They're not doing well trading with the Indians. The Indians sort of get fed up with Henry and don't want to deal with him anymore. And the Half Moon starts its journey north, and he tells the men they're going to go west to the Northwest Passage, and the men mutiny. There's 2 reasons probably why they mutiny. One, they believe that Henry is hoarding food for the favorites he has on the ship. Another one is he wants the Northwest Passage, and they just want to go back to England, where they're from. And so anyway, in June 22nd to be exact, the longest day of the year, they mutiny, and they take Henry and put him in a small boat with his son. His son's name is Jack, who was sailing with him, a young kid, about 12 or 13. And they put a couple of the sick crew, because they didn't want to deal with that, and a couple of Henry's favorites. And they put them all, 9 of them, in a boat, including the carpenter. The carpenter, they wanted to keep on the ship because he's a valuable guy on the ship, but he wants to go with Captain Hudson. And so they put him on a ship and they sail away, and there they go. So as far as Henry's concerned, that's the last we know of him. We have his ship logs up to August of the previous year, but we don't know any more about it. So now the story takes a funny turn, because now you have to rely on the mutineers telling you the truth. And we know they contradicted themselves many times, because like all men at that time who could write, and half of them could write, they kept diaries. Even when they got back to England, they told stories that were not consistent with what they said in the diary, and then sometimes they were. When they get back to England, 2 of the men are already dead, the main mutineers, and the other ones are convicted of mutiny and told they were going to be hanged, but they're not hung. We'll show you later that they're brought back to this bay the following year because they lie. They say they had found the Northwest Passage, so this makes them more valuable to the English and keeps them alive. In fact, they're never killed. They always think, well, maybe these guys know something that'll help us. Okay, that's those guys. They're back in England. Several of them are dead. Some of them are sailing back here in a year or 2. Some of them make several voyages back here. So they stay alive. What happened to Henry and his 9 men? We don't know. There's legends. He could have died in the boat. Not likely for a good mariner. If he got in trouble, he'd just take the boat to shore. But what happens when he gets to shore? He's already had trouble with the Indians, and he may not get along with them, and they may not be interested in helping him, and he could starve on land. Or he could get back on the boat and try make another attempt, and a combination of those things could have easily happened. On the other hand, there's a legend that he did get at peace with some of the Cree, and in fact stayed here and married into the Cree people, and even sired children. And that's one of the reasons we came to the village of Wamingi, which is a Cree village, because some of the elders there believe that's exactly what happened. So they think Henry Hudson is buried somewhere near here. There's supposedly a grave, but no one can find it for us, of a red-bearded man who was very short. That would be the carpenter. And but nobody's been able to find it. It's very acidic soil here, so that things are probably wasted away. Historians haven't spent much time thinking about this, and probably because it's futile. It's hard to determine what happened, and a historian likes to have facts, and there are hardly any facts. Archaeologists have done a little work on it, again, not as much as you might expect, and maybe it's futile as well. But we're amateurs. We're not constrained by those professional desires. So we're just up here seeing what we can see, talking to these people. George certainly thinks Henry Hudson is remains of him are around here somewhere. So George is taking us out as far as he can into Hudson Bay to see what we can see. Whether we'll see any animals, any seals, it would be great. Whether we see any fowl, that would be great. Whether we get to any places where we can see remains of at least European, if not Henry Hudson, dwellings, we don't know. In 1617, a crew came back and they found evidence that there were houses, or at least huts, that looked like they were built not in the Cree tradition, but in the European tradition, and perhaps the men survived for several years and then died out. And so, whatever happened, within a dozen years, the Hudson Bay Company was formed. And the Hudson Bay Company was not into minerals because they knew that wasn't working. So they were into pelts, beaver pelts in particular, and that company became one of the richest companies in the world. Henry Hudson, therefore, became a very famous guy. Whether he deserves all of that fame, we don't know. There's only one person in the world with more land and water named after him than Henry Hudson. But certainly he got credit for several things he didn't do, but then there's a lot of things he did do, including coming to Albany and open up New York and coming up here to Hudson Bay. So what we're going to do is tack to and fro in this bay with George, our boatsman, and a couple of his helpers to see what we can see and to come back to Albany and to tell you a tale. Now, whether it's a tale that's accurate, we don't know. We probably have no way of proving it, but at least we'll tell you what we've learned and let you see what you think about it for yourself. Hi. In the boat we told you about what we think may have happened, or the various options of what may have happened to Henry Hudson after the mutiny, how he might have been stranded, how he might have died in the boat, how he might have really integrated into the Cree people, and his genes may be in the descendants of the people in this little village of Wamingi. Now we're going to tell you a few things about what may or may not have happened afterwards. Most of this is fairly accurate because it comes from ship's logs. And a ship is almost required to keep an accurate log of what happened. Now, the year after Henry was lost, 1611, the vessel makes it home with most of the mutineers, 9 of them. 2 of them died, several others got lost on the way. The 2 main mutineers, Jude and Green, were gone. And now what does Britain do with these guys? They were under the edict of being hung, but they weren't hung. In fact, they delayed the trial for 5 years. But immediately, the next year, 1612, they send out 2 vessels. The Discovery again, and the other vessel, I can't think of his name at the moment. But anyway, they come again to this bay. Now, they have 3 of the mutineers with them. And the reason they have those with them is, and the reason they probably didn't hang them, is they started changing their story. And even though in some of the logs and some of their own diaries they had said part of the reason they mutinied was not just because of lack of food and Henry not distributing the food fairly, but because Henry wanted to find the Northwest Passage and they were tired of that. They now started talking like they knew where the Northwest Passage was. Why would they do that? Well, they would do that because they wanted people to find some use for them, not hang them. And of course, the first use for them is to send them back on the next voyage. I think the other boat was called the Repulse. So the Repulse and the Discovery set sail from England to find this Northwest Passage. They don't stop at the Hudson Strait, the Furious Overfall, like all the other vessels did before Hudson, and probably Portuguese got through before even him. But they do get there, and they make their way through knowing there's a bay on the other side. Now remember what I told you about that. You had current in that strait coming furiously to the east, and also on the northern edge of the strait, furious to the west. That's what made that strait so damaging, because you had eddy currents, you had whirlpools, you had tides, 53 feet tides. It's an amazing problem to get through there on a vessel. Added, in any time of year, especially in the spring and in through June and July, you have large chunks of ice roaring through that current, and if they strike your boat, you're gone. They make it anyway. They make it through this passage, and they get into Hudson's Bay. And then they're supposedly on a rescue mission, because obviously they're going to tell everybody we're going to find Henry and his other crewmates, because that's the right thing to do. But they spend all of their time going around the northern part of the bay, looking for the Northwest Passage. There's no doubt on these voyages, there was nothing but the Northwest Passage in their mind. Now the crew had told them that they had gotten to the Northwest Passage, but now the crew is talking like they don't know where it is, and things have changed. The captain's starting to wonder if this crew really knows what they're talking about. But one thing seems clear, and again this relates to the ship's logs. Nowhere in the logs of either of those ships, the Repulse or the Discovery, do they say they come this far south to this area, the James Bay area of Hudson's Bay. And the crew had already told them a year before that that's where the mutiny occurred. Now, why would they not come here if their main mission, other than the Northwest Passage, is to find Henry Hudson and bring home the survivors? Who knows? It could be that the crew lied again and said, well, we set them off in the boat, but they followed us for a while, and we know they made it to the northern part of the bay. Or more likely, the crew didn't want them to come down here. By crew, I mean those three survivors, the three mutineers, if you will, because on the odd chance they might find Hudson and they might find the rest of the survivors, and then those three guys would probably be hung. So you have all of these problems going on in the minds of those three men, and in the captains who don't know whether to believe it or not. So they spend a lot of time in the northern portion of the bay, not down here, and the Repulse gets stuck in the ice and crushed and sinks. And the Discovery, the very ship that Hudson came into this bay with, rescues them and brings them home. So in 1612, they go home and they say, we can't find the Northwest Passage. Several other attempts are made, and they finally, in about 1619, say, as far as we know, there is no outlet to Hudson Bay that will take you west, and they give up on that quest. Now, they were right. The ice blocks the western exit of the bay all year round, until recently. With global warming, that ice has now receded, and actually now you can, at certain months, go all the way from England to the Pacific in the Northwest Passage, ice-free. And you'll be seeing more of that as the ice consistently retreats. The Arctic ice is shrinking quite a bit every year, and the Northwest Passage has become a real thing. However, a few dozen years after Hudson, Hudson's Bay Company comes here and sets up an enormous operation that becomes one of the wealthiest companies in the world, not trading for the ore and the minerals that Hudson was looking for. He was certainly looking for those, but for the beaver pelts that he brought back. So the fur trade becomes an enormously important thing, and Henry Hudson becomes a bit of a hero. Even though he has all of this territory, the Hudson River, Hudson Bay, Hudson Straits, all towns named after him, it's hard to determine whether he deserves all of that or whether he doesn't. There were other explorers here before him. There were others after him. The Hudson Straits should have been named after several other people, including Davies, who discovered them when Hudson was just one of his seamen. But at any rate, a Dutchman wrote a book about Hudson in which he was laudatory on one hand, but also accused him of being a spy for the British on the other. And so he became a very fanciful character. Some people say he shows up in various forms in Shakespeare's plays as some character, some mariner. And so he becomes very famous posthumously. And of course, it's kind of romantic. Is he still alive? Is he fathering children among the natives? Will he someday return like Captain Bligh did after the mutiny, the mutiny on the Bounty, or whatever? Will he ever come back? And he never comes back. But the legends continue. This goes on for, about 130 years, until finally this bay is completely charted. The shores are becoming, there are forts all over here. In fact, About 500 miles directly west of where we stand here on Hudson Bay is a fort called Fort Albany. And our boatsman, who you met just previously, George, when I told him I was from Albany, he thought I was from Albany Island, Fort Albany, which is right across the bay, where I suppose a few thousand people live. When I told him I was from Albany, New York, he more or less didn't know about Albany, New York, but he knew about Fort Albany across this bay. So Hudson and Albany are intertwined in many, many different ways. I think Hudson, if he were alive today, would be shocked that New Amsterdam, of course, was formed a few years after he died, would be called New York, and Beaverwick, Fort Orange in Albany, would then be anglicized to Albany. Although he was an Englishman, so calling things after the Duke of Albany would not be the worst thing in the world. Then this bay became extremely famous for trappers, and even now the Crete people make their living mainly by running trap lines around here. One of those trap lines is called Little White Man, and it's been known to be called Little White Man for hundreds of years. Some people say that was a trap line that was set by Henry Hudson's son Jack. Again, we have trouble getting anywhere. June, there's a lot of ice in the bay. We don't want to go out too far. We went out a little bit in the boat, but you can't get that far because you could be crushed by ice. And it's the worst type of ice. It's cracking up right now and reforming and floating towards you and floating away from you. And we have to be very careful of that. So we couldn't make the journeys we'd like to make. In fact, to do that, you have to come back here in late July, early August, when the ice is pretty clear, and before the fall starts and it starts to set again. So we've kind of finished this part of our journey. We have a surprise in store for you at the end of the video that also is going to show you something about Henry Hudson and a legend among a different tribe, the Ottawa, in southern Ontario, which is going to be about 600 or 700 miles south of where we are now. See it? They did a good job of putting them back together.
Let me see.
Are you recording voice too?
Mm-hmm.
Brian is taking a close-up now of the inscription. There's an HH, two clear H's. Below that to the right, a 1612, which is also very clear. And below that, the word captive, the letters T-I-V-E are clear. But the CAP may have been either lost or ground down or worn off, or maybe when this stone was damaged, it was broken into 4 parts by vandals.
I can see
Maybe
it right
that
here.
was destroyed.
So
Can you see the C?
There's the A,
Oh, you got
the
it.
P, T, I.
Well, Brian can even see all of the letters. So what we've done is we've come now, this must be, let's see, 400, it's about 800 miles, a little more than 800 miles, from where we started up on Hudson Bay to get the first piece of solid evidence of Henry's perhaps demise, or at least what he was doing after the mutiny. The mutiny was in 1611. He sails into the bay in 1610, the year after he was in Albany. So he sails the Discovery into the bay in 1610. 1611 is the mutiny, and that's the last we hear of him. But yet this stone is uncovered in 1959 when they're building a road. They unearthed this thing, and it says on it, HH 1612 captive. Some people believe this is Henry Hudson, 1612, the year after the mutiny, being held captive. By who? Well, it's quite possible, since he had a small boat, that he negotiated the rivers and kept trying to come south to see if he could be rescued, after waiting perhaps a while to see if he'd be rescued on the bay. But the bay, of course, he's not doing very well up there. He's not surviving very well. He gets this far south, again, 800 miles south of where we started, and he finds himself captive. And who would have captured him? It would have been the Ottawa Indians. There are some oral traditions among the Ottawas that he was captured. A white man was captured. They wouldn't have cared what his name was. And that what happened to him after that, we don't know. Did the Ottawa kill him? Did they let him marry into the tribe? Who knows what happened to Henry Hudson? But at any rate, this is the only real evidence that looks like it's genuine. Now, how do you prove? It says at the bottom here, it says, we hope some archaeologists will come here and see if they can figure out
if this stone is genuine. You can't date a stone with radioactive carbon and figure it out. Stones are ancient, and you wouldn't have the disparity between the years would be too great. So how do you tell what this is? You might have some expert and say, well, that's the way 1612, that looks like the way it would be carved by a guy of that period. The 6 is a little different and almost looks like a G than I would carve a 6. Maybe that's the way they wrote that day. But remember, they're doing this with a chisel and or stone, not a chisel, but a stone upon a stone, and they're not going to be able to get it as accurate as it like itself. So you can't like see his handwriting. Some people say this HH is an old symbol for the Ottawa Indians anyway, but and they have found other stones with just HH along the river. Well, it could be, you could argue that Henry was writing HH on stones more or less as he went down, and he finally got to a place where he had enough time to write HH 1612 captive. So we're going to have to leave this stone because we can't interview it, can't tell us much about it. The people in the area just know they have it, and they're almost pleading with somebody who can perhaps do inscriptions to come up and decipher this and to tell them whether it could be genuine. If it is a hoax, nobody has owned up to it. It went out 57 years from the time of the discovery of this stone, and remember, it was unearthed, it was underneath the ground. So 57 years later, nobody said, oh, I did that hoax, or somebody else did that hoax. So we're going to have to end our saga of what happened to Henry with this solid object and say maybe he wound up captive in the Ottawas, maybe he didn't, maybe he married into the Ottawas, maybe he was up with the Crees, maybe he died in his boat, maybe he died in a watery grave, as some people say. So Henry remains elusive. Who knows, maybe he even made it to Albany and he married into the Albanians. So we'll see you. This is from Siena College, Tom Kuhil, Brian Massman, and Pete Iorizzo from the Albany Times-Union, signing off on our quest to find Henry Hudson.